Some people just won't let go of the past, no matter how many polygons and star voices you throw at them. In America, those people attend the Classic Games Expo to swap Defender anecdotes with like-minded buddies. But UK-based retro gamers have always had to stay at home with their joysticks, until now.
The Classic Games Expo is 2 days dedicated to arcade machines, consoles, computer games, everything else from the 1970s through to the early 1990s.
Which means as well as displays, there'll be classes in gaming DIY.
We've got workshops taking place at the event as well, where people can actually learn to build an arcade machine themselves based around modern equipment.
And Chris will be showcasing his own scarily large collection.
I've got about 170 to 200 machines, ranging from the earliest of Sinclair and Commodore computers up to sort of the modern but pre-PC machines. And the idea is that I want to be able to sort of show people not only my collection, but as I say, the sort of historical sort of timeline of computers and how they've evolved over the past 20 and 30 years. So it's a good way for me now to get everything out of the loft, dust it off, clean it up and get it on display.
Helping Chris along the way is specialist games magazine Retro Gamer, sponsors of the exhibition.
The reason why we're sponsoring it is because we're the UK's first classic gaming magazine. We're the only magazine in the country dedicated purely to gaming of a gone-by era, and the CGE UK Expo, which is coming up obviously in July, is the first of its kind in the UK, so there was an obvious synergy and an obvious fit.
Amazingly, Retro Gamer appeals to a large and diverse audience.
Your typical reader's sort of 20-something, 25, 35-year-old male predominantly, of course, which tends to be the trend. But again, we've got 40-plus somethings who were into the real early stuff in the 70s. But like anything else retro nowadays, it's quite cool and nostalgic, so they will go and buy it to relive their youth. And then we've got the real geek element who consider all games should have stopped being made after the Commodore died. Even sort of teenagers now who have just sort of heard about all this retro gaming stuff, gone out, hunted it down on the internet and got into it.
Of course, the big question is, why?
The market, I don't think, has ever died. I think people are obviously very much into their PC, PlayStation 2 and Xbox games now, but there's always going to be a market for the retro gaming side of things because the games are so simple, so playable. Everyone can pick up one of these games and have a go at it. Simplicity, ease of gameplay has got to be the biggest draw for these machines. In the good old days of the computers of the 80s and even the 70s, it was a case of you had a left and right key and a jump key and maybe a fire button here and there, so at most it was 4 keys.
It was all about playability and simple, addictive fun. And the software was obviously restricted by the hardware, so they had very little memory. The graphics were very basic, the characters were very basic, the landscapes were small. The 80s is cooler now than it was in the 80s. It seemed everything retro nowadays is cool, and that transition is carried through into the gaming arena.
So as Chris dusts down his old Operation Thunderbolt in preparation for the exhibition, just what are the guys expecting in terms of numbers?
We don't know. It's like Retro Gamer magazine. When we first put it out there, we had absolutely no idea what was going to happen, and now it's flying.